Ketchup and ZSX joining us here on the desk. Gentlemen, Base, let's start with him. Been pretty consistent throughout the last few stages. Certainly is a player who's capable of producing some upsets. He has kind of dynamically changed his own style as the tried and true defensive Base has come out many times in stage 3, but also a unique kind of I wouldn't say aggressive, but maybe more like the Clay version of Base, where it's like I can be what I need to be depending on the matchup. Anyone like to comment on Base's performance here in stage 3?
I think we kind of just look at the results of these kind of players and it's kind of Base all over. There is an element of consistency where he's able to take maps off pretty much anyone, no matter who they are. But with Base, it rarely is just maps, and it does tend to be series overall. I think a lot of people out there consider him, one of the best Quake champion players in the community right now. And even against the likes of Cypher, Kilson, Avec, and Wenger, he's able to get a map there 2-1, and a lot of those maps are close and could definitely go the other way, right? I think, yeah, there was a 3-0 that he conceded to Razy, but across the board, when there's a big finals coming up, although not everyone has all eyes on Base, you kind of know and or expect him to get pretty damn far.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And it obviously wasn't his best stage in terms of placement, in terms of being 6, when we've seen him higher than that. But again, as Ketchup alluded to, you see the consistency throughout and how close in context a lot of these games were. It means it's not a fair reflection. And to your point, we definitely saw a new side to his game, and how, as you rightly put it, almost proactive he could be now. It's not just more of the methodical play. He has more edges to that sword, which makes him even scarier. And speaking to the pros, he's pretty much one of the few players that no one wants to play against. He's frustrating, he's very skilled, and I'm sure he can cause a lot of upstairs. Yeah,
and he's produced some fantastic games over the course of stage 3. And the question now is going to be, are we going to see another one of those? Let's talk first about his opponent, though, cha1n from the NA region. And cha1n is kind of this very unique story in that coming off of one of the more previous stage finals, we were like, wow, cha1n is like stepping up his game. Look at the opponents he's knocking down. But then the stage performance didn't really mirror what we saw in the finals. And I would say the exception is these last few weeks for cha1n actually saw him really kind of picking his game up quite a bit and playing, I think, a little bit more like we expected him to, right, at the time. So as he goes up against Base, Ketchup, will start with you. What are your thoughts here on cha1n?
cha1n's in a interesting position where he's definitely the stage being overshadowed by Xenoq and Maxter, because cha1n, the reality was, he was the talk of the town of the Americas a couple of stages ago, and there was a time where we talked about him as undisputed top 2. There was a point where he'd surpassed cha1n in terms of the results, and that was for good reason. He was grinding incredibly hard. It was absolute focus. I don't know whether that focus has had a bit of a shift. Real life affects us all in different ways, and maybe he hasn't had the same kind of commitments, whether or not it's in his, he has something to say about it, I don't know. But my point is, recently, it has not been the cha1n that once was out there making the absolute name for himself as top 2 in Americas, and then couple that with the fact that Dramis is really impressing, Xenoq is impressive as hell, Maxter is impressive as hell. He's kind of stuck in the middle, and it's not necessarily due to him alone. There's a lot of factors at play there.
I think the last point you made there, Ketchup, is probably the most prevalent, is that he came out of his shell, Katowice, 18 months ago now, so think how far back that was. But it's more the rest of the NA scene has just grown and grown and grown, and he's somewhat plateaued. I think the other thing, particularly at this stage, that wasn't in his favor was the meta. Very early on, for the first half of QPL season, it was very combat heavy, very tank heavy. And he's not that type of player. We've seen the results begun to pick up, largely, well, not largely, but at least in partial, due to the fact we're going back to the lighter champions, which is his bread and butter, so he can play that keep away game, play around that rail, and he's beginning to find his groove a little bit more. The only other thing in his corner is that his play style is quite a tournament-specific play style. He's safer. He doesn't make that many mistakes usually, and so into the kind of stages of tournaments, it can benefit him to some degree.
Well, I think it's time for us to take a look at the picks and the bans. Well said and good points about both of these players, but really it comes down to what action are we going to see. And here we've got for maps, Veil, map number 1, Deep Embrace for map number 2, and then Ruins to finish us off should we need it. Who wants to walk us through champ picks?
Looking at these different champions, especially coupled with the maps, and it's kind of these two players all over. You look at base and you have 3 mediums and it's utility above all else. You look at cha1n, the Galena on Vale, she's one of the best champions that you can pick on that map, so it makes perfect sense. At the same time, Deep Embrace, that Athena, you know, he's always been considered one of the stronger Athena players out there, and Deep Embrace, if you have a strong Athena, we've seen how much magic she can do, but then Ruins, it is that battle of absolute information advisor, but then the riskier style of Nyx. But cha1n, as you quite rightly said though, Sex, if it is that game of patience and being defensive and kind of looking for rails first, Nyx does complement that quite well.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is a perfect example we just talked about. Like, if you picked what cha1n is picking in Athena and Nyx early stages QPL this season, you would have been shot on. So yeah, it helps him now that he's got this backing and then can play around these champions a lot better. And we also see no heavy picks or bans. Again, just showing that shift in the meta, something we wouldn't have seen 4 or 6 weeks ago. So it's really nice to see it catch up it perfectly. It plays into the way they want to play the game, which is more strategic or methodical. Really like the Galena pick on Vale. A lot of people say it's the strongest, but Bison has a great role there as well. Yeah, Doom is obviously the staple pick, but if cha1n can pull out the Athena to the level we know he can, he would definitely push base to the limit. And then ending up on the Nyx, again, it's got highs and lows, and I'm not the biggest fan of Visor. We saw it earlier, I think it was the Effortless on Awoken. Now Awoken, you definitely need mobility. Ruins, less so, but as it was seen in that particular game, the lack of mobility on Visor can be exploited. So base, as base does, has to play very careful around how he uses that piercing sight.
Yeah, I love all your points. I think it's definitely good call outs, and we did see that Visor Nyx, and it wasn't very pretty. Now Ruins, definitely different size, different layout, could be more beneficial, but we're going to have to see exactly how that will play out. I'm excited definitely for that Deep Embrace matchup. I said it before, I'll say it again, like Athena can be masterful on that map, but it's also very difficult because you make one mistake and suddenly you become a very easy target. So at the rapid pace that we might see these two go at it, who knows how this will unfold, but it looks like we have both players good to go. Catch up, take that front row seat. We'll see you in a few. I'm going to cast this one with ZSX, and we'll see you in a bit.
See ya.
All right. Dan, your thoughts?
Hello.
Base, cha1n, you want to throw out a prediction here? I mean, you boldly threw out the fact that Rafa was going to not win. So if you got any other bold predictions, let me know. Right.
I thought you were going to say something else there. I haven't had any predictions from you around the Rafa situation, but I'm going to pluck for a base 2-0. I think that cha1n struggles have been there this season, and base for me, as much as their relative positions, has just been the better player on paper. So I have to go with that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think I've been really impressed with base just mixing it up, right? Someone who I think traditionally was considered a one-trick pony, whether or not that feedback was right, I don't know the motivation behind base's kind of change and shift in the meta a little bit. Whatever it was, whether it was feedback getting or whether it was difficulty approaching certain opponents, I've been a really big fan. Like he is definitely surprised me in terms of like, wow, wasn't expecting base to kind of play that opponent this way, and has certainly shown us the great chess-like defensive game as well. But I kind of think the ability to be able to move in and out of both of those modes of play is really impressive. So I would have to echo what you said and probably say a 2-0 base.
But I am really interested to see how this one will play out. I think one of the challenges that cha1n puts on himself a little bit in the way he plays, he can sometimes give too much room to his opponents, sometimes give up items in favor of position, and loves to play around his rail and take these positions. That one, on the one hand, gives base a bit more room to breathe, and as you say, maybe adapt, maybe be aggressive, and that could be scary in its own right. But also, base is generally the one that understands the positions a little bit better and is also preempting his opponents. So that mind game and the way in which they bounce off each other is going to be a really interesting way to see how this map goes.
Yeah, and we are officially live. Looking through the eyes of base as we start off, he's going to get that heavy spawn. And already having some rockets fly his way within the flight path as The radio tower did not let him know there was a potential collision there. Nothing happened, and so we're going to start this off a little slow. Sees that first totem, takes it out, drops down Timmy as well, and now we just waited out for this first battle. Actually catches his opponent, finds the tri-bolt, lands a great rail, looking for another vertical. Does miss that, tries to get some additional tri-bolt, but not going to happen. And so, right, kind of dealing with the situation at hand, does see his opponent coming out for that heavy. Lands the rail, but is going to have to give it up.
Yeah, really good start by Base. And again, cha1n trying to play a bit tricky, but Base catching him at every single turn and already connecting with a few rails. And we've seen for these defensive players, the rail is always so key. We've seen in the past, cha1n just not hitting anything and his game falling apart. Likewise, Base can adapt a bit better, but still so heavily reliant on the rail that if it is connecting, he becomes a different beast.
Yeah, definitely looking like a let's set up a trap on both sides. And hold on, we've got the heavy coming up, tri-bolt damage yet again. We've seen Base actually using quite a bit of tri-bolt. He's in a phenomenal position to take control of this cycle as he does. He picked up the heavy, he picked up the mega as well, sees a totem on the other side, but obviously the target is cha1n himself. He takes him out. He's going to also be able to clear out these totems, would be a big victory, but he is pushed out by cha1n. Now, has he given up quite yet? He does know the location of at least 2 of those totems. Finds cha1n in the acidic light room, and cha1n actually gets away from there, and I bet he's breathing a sigh of relief as they fight in the RL room. cha1n in a bad place at a bad time as Base picks up that first frag.
Trying to force the spawn frag as well, does actually guess the wrong way, but you can see the patience there and the awareness. What it also does is it now splits the timing. Base showing a lot of confidence here. Again, reading cha1n, catching him down below, bouncing him around, eats a totem on his way out, so it does take a lot of damage, more than he anticipated. Probably has to give up. No, he doesn't. He doesn't have to go this heavy at all.
Yeah, that turret is just, it's going to start paying rent up there too. Like, it's been alive forever. And now we see Base moving in. It gives him the opportunity to kind of keep that rail away and also just check for any totems. And there we go. Timmy going nuts there as it hits a couple of shots. Now the mega is up. It was grabbed, but Base dishing out a lot of damage, enough to the point that cha1n is now in the danger zone, coming around the corner. In that light room, he does get tagged with a little bit of damage, and that tri-bolt somehow still alive, dodging everything. I cannot believe that he managed to stay alive there, but alas, here we are, 2-0.
I mean, I'm not actually inclined, but has cha1n had a major item beyond his first pickup? It feels like he's just been irrelevant on this map so far. As Base once again gets another rotation of the items, cha1n is just relegated to the low ground.
Yeah, and you got to be asking yourself, what is my plan of attack if I cannot, you know, move in on any of these power-ups? And you have the heavy up. There's going to be an attempt here by cha1n. He's LG'd over the top. It spawns right now in the middle of this battle, and Base easily takes it out. His reward, not only the destruction of that totem, but also the heavy as well. And so, you know, what does it come down to? ZSX, is it hitting those rails, like making more long distance shot? Because that's also an area where Base excels. And I have to say that cha1n's turret is doing a great job in this one, letting him know, hey, I know my opponent's in the mega room, doing a little bit of damage, and then following up and kind of becoming the exterminator, taking care of the pest that's on the map. Right now, this strat's worked for him. 4 frags in the first 4 minutes. And, you know, cha1n's got to be a little lost in terms of what is my plan of attack here.
Yeah, it all feels like a bit in between at the moment, right? It doesn't feel like he's using the rail particularly well, and then he's going for these committals a bit late in the day, 5-6 seconds before major items, dying, and then Base recoups. It's neither here nor there. So he either needs to go in full throttle, make himself known on the items and try and win them out, or stick to his rail game, but not one or the other. But as you rightly pointed out, Base has also got the upper hand when it comes to these rail encounters, as cha1n is just not connecting. And this is the problem we've seen with cha1n in the past during the season. If his rail's not connecting, he looks a little bit lost, and that's what it seems to me at this point in time. He doesn't have a plan B.
Yeah, it's like a flow, right? When it is on, you see everything else kind of coming together and clicking. And he does land some really nice rockets right there, but cha1n himself takes enough damage that he can't really push the issue. As Base gets his turret back up, he puts it right back in that same spot. He extends his lease on the apartment, and Timmy will continue to just chill out right there. Now, cha1n finally able to grab a heavy, and this is kind of a, I guess, one step towards a multiple step program to try to get back on track here. Down by 5, he's got to play smart, but the timer's ticking away too. If he could keep at least control over one of these major items, I do think that opens up a few more doors.
100%. It's pretty much his first item since the first round as well. So good to get back on the board, bit of confidence. And he's been fairly unlucky at times. He's had some close engagements, hadn't done any pre-engagement damage. The base was so stacked, he couldn't get the frag. That's a good initiation, but base will be able to retreat. But what we see from base as a point of difference from cha1n is that he's really trying to pressure the item on pickup, not win them. But you've seen him sticking around here. He's now up on the high ground again. This is where cha1n just wasn't able to get because of that turret. He might even be winning himself a heavy before he got railed. Anyhow.
And those are the types of rails we need cha1n to hit in order to kind of bring this one back. Now he's doing a great job. LG out. Will he be able to get it?
Nice.
He does. He rocket jumps back up to the top. Not the cleanest frag that we've seen here, but right now any kind of progress is important. That LG, though, ripping through cha1n's health, not giving him a whole lot of options as base on just basically light armors. And, of course, the Mega he picked up, doing quite well. Turrets back up again. And I do believe that we've got heavy up in just about 2 seconds, and there it is, landing on top of that. So 4 frags still here in the deficit for cha1n. Base seems to have kind of fallen off the horse, but is right back on, keeping that pressure up. Once again at the Mega, just absolutely pushing cha1n out and forcing him to get out. In fact, he's going to keep this chase up. That LG damage is bonkers, as he even takes out a totem in that process as well. And cha1n, like, that has got to be frustrating. You know, what do I do here? I'm not able to push. My, you know, defensive hits aren't really hitting like I need them to. There was a nice rail, and we just need that duplicated many, many times.
Many, many times, but loving the proactive aggression from base there, just pushing out, overextending, understanding the limits. But also what he's done is completely distorted the timing. You can see that situation was born out in the fact that cha1n had no idea when that Mega was, just praying to the gods of Quake that it was spawned sometime soon. And base has an absolutely translucent understanding of when everything is, and is just abusing that fact.
Agree. And with about 2 minutes left to go here, ZSX, it's looking pretty good for base. As you know, he can always go into his impeccable turtle style, in which he just brings his arms and his legs and his head into the shell and then hides himself somewhere on the map, which he's doing right here. Actually takes a little bit of rocket damage, a little red alert, an alarm goes off for cha1n, but he's got to be realizing that time is closing here and is very, very limited of a resource. On the chase with the LG, does get met with that turret, and base is going to be running away. But at this point in time, I think he's in the clear to be able to just kind of slow play the final 90 seconds.
Yeah, and this was a typical clinical base display. Played the basics extremely well, and again, it's not just rotating the items. I think the previous push where we just discussed, where he kept extending, pushing base cha1n back, doing significant damage, didn't lead to a frag, but it just forced his positioning and allowed him to continue to dictate the tempo and control the items. So all these kind of micro decisions, base had on point once again, and you can see the challenge of even trying to get a single frag, as cha1n is praying anything can happen at this point, but base just makes everyone's life so difficult.
He really does. 3 frags now, quick off of the spawn. cha1n is going for it. Everything that he's got on this one. Base is going to skirt around that teleporter exit and then come back around, grab that Mega, start doing some damage. But if cha1n, held up by the power of the LG, I do think that if cha1n was able to maybe convert a frag off of that last one, I'd be like, you know, he might be able to really high octane this one. But at this point, it is over. Base will take map number 1 in the final 10 seconds. 7-3. Might see one more frag here, and there it is. It goes to base, making the final score 8-3, and base will go up by 1 map.
He will. And let's look at the context as well and give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt. The fact that we were playing on a EU server, maybe the rail situation was partly down to the fact that he's just not as comfortable as others on that particular ping. I don't know. But like, once again, we saw the rail just not there. And so the game plan from cha1n was largely not there. And because the rail wasn't connecting, he was then making these moves to try and force the issue. But without doing the initiation damage, he was just coming out a little bit unstuck. And you can see here the amount of times he got based low from these pushes was consistent every single time. Base was so low, but because he hadn't hit any of his rails, Base got away with sub 80 health. And he would have died otherwise. So that's the balance, really, just the minute things.
That is the balance. And the interesting thing about what's about to happen is when we move to map 2, which is Deep Embrace, the pacing of this game is going to change, especially with Athena on the board, right? Doom is a pick we see quite often on Deep Embrace. Athena is one that we've been seeing more of, and that momentum and kind of mobility can do an awful lot for you on this map. But as I mentioned, I still feel like it's a very difficult champion to perfect, right? We've seen those awkward moments where it's like your grapple is just a pixel off and suddenly you're kissing geometry that you did not intend to be, you know, touching or running into, and that could kill your momentum. It can make you a very easy target. So I commend players that go all in on Athena on these maps, because it's just a treat to watch to see, you know, can they play that kind of coveted perfect Athena game. Base, though, I don't think he's going to be too surprised by that. He's going to have to keep up with the pace that cha1n can bring to the table, though.
The two questions for me is that can cha1n get more map control? You can see here he just got demolished in terms of the major items, and he's going to need them. Secondly, is his rail going to begin to connect? Because if it is, it's a completely different story. The one thing I will throw Base's way is that Doom is just much easier to execute on this particular map, and you have a bit more of a buffer on your stack. But as you pointed out, Athena's limits and ceiling, if you will, are much, much higher, and cha1n can fully dictate the tempo if he gets ahead of Steam in an early lead.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the rail too, and we see this quite commonly on Deep Embrace, but players, especially near that middle, or the beginning of the game, getting that right spawn means that you can kind of control and keep that weapon out of the hands of your opponents, which can have a drastic results in the matchup. Doing that for 10 minutes, pretty unlikely, but I would expect that, you know, either of these players to get that at the that spawn over there, and maybe that becomes a part of their game plan. But we're loading into our second map. Base is up by 1. If he wins this next map, he will be advancing on. cha1n will be dropping to the lower bracket, and we will continue our round of 16. Thanks for joining us here for day 1 of QuakeCon for the QPL World Championship. Got 3 days of action coming at you. We're just about to hit halfway through day 1, but still a lot more coming. And we've got both players in the map. We're about ready to start, and Deep Embrace is on deck. So
pretty much, I guess, the fan favorite map at this point, still in the pool. All action, lots of fun, lots of variety. Great addition.
So Base did get that heavy spawn. He immediately grabs the heavy, and then, of course, that rail. So let's see what he is going to do. Knowing that you are the only one on the map with the rail is actually a very, very powerful thing. He's looking for the opportunity. Of course, that's about, well, I guess he does have the RL too. So he's going to hop up to the middle and already doing a dance around this pillar. A little bit of damage coming out from cha1n, but nothing to call the ambulance over. Just slap a band-aid on that thing, and Base will pick up the next heavy. We've got both players kind of controlling their side of the major items.
Absolutely, and to your point, Base is controlling that side because that's where the rail is, and so he really doesn't want to move. He's trying to catch the Athena out as she makes her way to the high ground. This time he has to forfeit the rail potentially if cha1n get it over there, but he can't. He still needs a rocket, in fact. He's managed to get to that now, but you can see he's had to use 2 of his grapples just to get out of that area.
Yeah.
So Base has done a good job so far of managing this side of the map and still limiting access to that rail.
And so far, you know, we always go, oh, Deep Embrace, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be impactful. But this also goes to show how two players can sort of occupy a side of the map. Now, we did see cha1n use that grapple to kind of get a surprise trap on his opponent. Base did take some damage, but it didn't quite zone the way I think he wanted to. Didn't open up too many possibilities. And now we've got both of our major items about ready to be up. Base continues to control that heavy while he relinquishes that mega to cha1n. But, you know, sometimes it's just a matter of running through these sort of exercises over and over until someone makes a mistake.
Yep.
And that's what both players are kind of looking for.
Having the high ground's always preferable. The safer position to be, more angles to play with. Plus, you just have full overview of the map. So cha1n's done an amazing job to get around, but the retaliation from base in that moment was sublime. They will trade major items because they have been on the same timing and will continue to do so. But it's about positioning now. cha1n's works his way round to that rail, so base has to play a little bit more careful than he has been doing so far.
Yeah, I mean, that exchange of the major items wasn't that big of a deal to base either, because he landed that rocket and the rail. And if I'm not mistaken, I was looking through base's eyes, but I believe that cha1n actually missed that grapple and then had to sort of double back in order to get that heavy. That could have, you know, changed. He could have been in a better positional spot, but he still took the damage. So cha1n's still keeping at it, though. It hasn't changed too much. And now we're going to swap once again as we are on a 0-0 Deep Embrace game about 3 minutes in.
Base, though, did extend there to try and do some damage onto the Mega. So in doing so, he's now delayed the items, which gives it more opportunity to one of the players to take the initiative. And Base is working his way around to the Mega side of the map. Good rail from cha1n. He will be expecting the push now from cha1n, so might not even be committing for this Mega, instead just positioned to do some sort of damage onto it and be wary as he's now on the low ground for the first time this map.
Yeah, making some noise too, giving away where he was at. A little bit more damage comes out. There's that Mega. Oh, that rail could have absolutely wrecked Base's day, but unfortunately cha1n doesn't connect with it. Now using that grapple in a very offensive manner, gonna come through that teleporter. The defensive rockets for Base fall short, and cha1n is on the board first with the first frag.
Nice follow-up as well as he catches him off the spawn. Big shotgun blast, but it's not really going to matter as he now can't get across in time to do any sort of damage over to this heavy. As I say that, though, he spawns right in front of it!
Oh my god.
I mean, okay.
Oh.
He's going to punch him as well!
Oh, yes! Are you kidding me? Oh, chat is about to explode after seeing that one. cha1n was on the board first, but look at this, suddenly 3-2 as Base completely turns it around. An unorthodox shotgun kill on top of that heavy, and then pulling out the rage and punching his opponent to death. There was a suicide there, and we will remain at the same scoreline, 3-2.
Spiraled out of control very quickly for cha1n, who needs to restore parity here. Oh, he gets caught on his grapple up, so waste that. Going to follow up the shotgun as well. cha1n's trying to stick around, do any sort of damage, but it's pretty futile as he walks away with 1 HP. It's probably even worse than dying, as now he gives up the entire map to the Doom.
And that's exactly what we were talking about. Those places where, you know, the grapple can actually put you in a worse situation than the one that you were in. The fact that Base was able to get as much shotgun damage as he did off of that was a bit surprising, but he's definitely capitalizing off of the mistakes of an Athena user and why it is tough to play this champion. It can look impressive and it can certainly serve you well, but it also can work against you.
100%. And this is why we see the Doom is just that tiny bit easier to execute. And it's also why cha1n has been respecting the upper ground, but nice rocket there. Base, unfortunately, is still going to continue to push, in fact. He knows that cha1n isn't entirely healthy himself, wants to do any sort of damage, but awkwardly, no one's connecting with anything at this point.
Wow. Oh my gosh. All right. Sorry, just the music starts up. I get all, you know, pumped and ready for it. A nice jumping rail there from Base as we're now looking through the eyes of cha1n as he's dropping or trying to hit some shots from down below.
Wow.
Another rail hits as cha1n is grappling away that long grapple. He goes into the window to grab the 225s, and a rocket's there to greet him at the door. There's the LG as well, and the last 20 seconds was everything that cha1n did not want to have happen is what happened. Base was at the right place the entire time.
Yeah, absolutely. He read like an open book. Every move he made, there was some sort of damage meeting him there. Great awareness from Base, and he follows up with 2 great rails back-to-back to extend his lead. Feels like the momentum has begun to shift as cha1n was restoring himself, but just the damage output from Base in these encounters has begun to grow as he's maturing into this set.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, it's clear, like, we've got some mobility versus mobility, but as you kind of pointed out, there's a safe mobility, unreal, 10 HP. He lands the rocket 6-3. He's going to recover from that one too. But Base has shown us that the dude mobility is definitely a safer choice. You're going to be making less mistakes, and you know, I wouldn't say you have the same level of mobility, actually much different, but in terms of access to, I need to be here and I'm going to get there this way, it's working out well for him. Now we do see cha1n applying that pressure, being like an annoying bug and just chipping away, but that does give him at least a little bit more comfort as he's still 2 frags behind with about 2.5 minutes left to go.
Still can't get over the ballsiness of Base to even get that frag in the first place, but cha1n is working his way around this Mega, having got a clean heavy. Got a rail and lightning gun, but no rockets, which is why he's playing a little bit careful in case Base was going to drop down, but he doesn't manage to pick up that weapon anyway, and needs this heavy, which he's going to get now.
Yeah, but can he do something with it? That's going to be the big question. Now, we have seen a couple of offensive grapple maneuvers by cha1n, but he might need to just take a couple of risks here in the final 2 minutes in order to make something happen. A surprise to a frag that could convert. It's possible, as we do see as he goes. Big grapple, huge rail, and cha1n does exactly what he needs to do. And this does set him up for a potential tie and sudden death here. 90 seconds left to go. Base off the spawn grabs that Mega, but cha1n has a chance.
And that was exactly it. Took a risk by extending out from the Mega, found his opponent, launched him into space. Now following up with 2 great rails back-to-back, searching out for Base. He's still got a minute. He can't afford to slow this pace down. He doesn't want to be overcommitting and eating unnecessary damage, which is what's happening here, but he's caught Base and got the frag.
There it is, 6 minute left to go, and an actual, oh my god, no, I want to see it so bad, but oh my god, no way. No way.
How?
Base taking the biggest risk. cha1n just didn't have a weapon in order to get rid of that last little bit of health that was remaining. And is Base going to pull this one away using the rage? I don't know. cha1n low, though, but the final 30 seconds.
He has to do something. He's got no health. He's got no resources. He's just trying to play slow and catch Base off guard, which he does. He catches on the jump and the second. What? He's got 10 HP left. Rail him again. And it's 7-7. 15 seconds left to go. ZSX. And I do think we're going to go to overtime. No! cha1n is like, no, we're not going to do it. I'm going to pull this one out. Off the spawn. Base has himself a rocket launcher. But can he do anything? He gets hit with the defensive rail. He knows exactly where his opponent is. And there it is. Time is up. cha1n pulls this out in the final 60 seconds. Wow.
Wow.
I mean...
Wow.
That was a roller coaster of emotion where it went from, yeah, Base has won this. Oh, where's cha1n coming back? No, Base is going to win this. And cha1n denies us all and takes it into a map 3.
You got to love those moments where you're like, hey, here's what could happen. And then cha1n just does exactly what he needs to do in order to make that a possibility. It also goes to show, boys and girls, and cats and dogs and ladies and gentlemen and everyone else, is that you don't give up until that buzzer sounds. Right. You really don't. And I have to commend cha1n. Like, I don't think there's a world where I criticize like Base in this. I think cha1n pulled out what he needed to in order to get victory. That wasn't a, like, I capitalized off of a base mistake at all.
100%. Change just George R.R. Martin does and refused to let the story end and kept it alive. But it was incredible. And as you rightly said, they both played to the absolute limit there. It was one of the slowest pace deep embraces we've seen all season, but strategical to the core, and the execution from cha1n was there. We said, is the rail going to be on point? It was. 55%, his most damaged weapon. Is his timing going to be there? It is. It's basically on point with base. So everything we said he needs to rectify, he did. And look at the damage output. He got 50% more than base, and base was living on the edge for large periods of that map. So full credit for cha1n in deserving that victory.
Yeah, and it's great that we are going on to this third and final map. It's going to be on Ruins, and base will be playing Visor. cha1n will be playing Nyx. Now, we talked about this matchup earlier on Awoken, and it really didn't go well for Visor. Piercing Sight wasn't doing much. Ghost Walk was, still the advantageous ability to have on that map. I do think that changes a little bit with Ruins, right? Ghost Walk, I think, is on par. It's going to be good regardless of the map. I do think that Piercing Sight serves a better purpose on Ruins, especially for base if he chooses, or if he's in a position where he can take an early lead and then use that almost in a defensive manner and basically just be where your opponent is not. So I don't know. We've seen earlier, I would say this matchup was a disaster, but on Ruins, I think it equalizes a little bit more.
No, 100%. I think if there's any one map where Nyx is probably not as ineffective and Visor's deficiencies are not illuminated, it's going to be Ruins for that point. Very little areas of the map where Nyx's utility comes to the absolute fore in terms of the wall jumping. Equally, because of that, Visor's lack of mobility doesn't get exploited anywhere near to the nth degree. You can play slow, you can camp in that heavy if you really want to, and just hunker down for days. And so, because it is such a vast map, the Piercing Sight is also a good tool to have. End of the day, if you let the Nyx get control, let her control the tempo, you're always going to be in for a lot of pain and problems, no matter who you play, particularly on a Visor. So it's really going to come down to how well can base get a good start, make sure he doesn't give up free damage to the Nyx, and use the Piercing Sight as good as he can.
And as we get ready for this next map to load up, it looks like Razy defeated Cygib, and we'll be moving on to face Dramas later on today here on the main stream. Coming up after this one, we're going to have Cypher versus CNZ. Of course, CNZ having what I hear is a really good game versus Nosfa. Didn't get a chance to see that one, but hopefully you did as well. So still so many great games. And, I would say a couple stages ago, ZSX, it's like, all right, let's get through day one, right? Like, we're going to see what we're going to see. It's a whole different ball game now. It's like not the case anymore.
Oh, man. I mean, we didn't get time to talk about it earlier, but really my dark horse looking at the brackets, Zenecu, like he's been steamrolling through the last few weeks of the season. He's been steamrolling through practice, and he's got a favorable draw in the bracket. So, I mean, that's a name you would have said, is he even going to survive QPL? We're now looking at, can he get further in the bracket? And it goes for so many of these players where it's a big question mark whether some of these big names even get to day 2.5 at this point.
Yep, you're absolutely right. So we're hearing a countdown, but I believe we're actually going to go to lobby. I feel you. I feel you, base. So we are back. We are back. Yeah, we're going to redo the lobby, so bear with us here in just a moment. As we mentioned, a lot of games still coming at you. We've got about, I think, 5 more games here on the A stream, and then of course the B stream gonna follow up with a few additional matches. All the matches from this point forward until finals, which is on Saturday, will be a best of 3. So obviously double elimination 2. You're in the upper bracket, the round of 16. You lose, you go down to the lower bracket, and you can go to quake.pglesports.com if you want to take a look at those brackets as well. So we're going to be recreating this one. Once again, base playing on the Visor and cha1n playing on the Nyx. This time, hopefully, we will start for real.
Hopefully. We're back on EU, though, so I guess we have to relook at the questions we talked about at the start. Is can cha1n pick it up and go from where he left off on Deep Embrace, because if he brings that level of game on a Nyx, it becomes problematic for base. If he doesn't, and we see more reminiscent of map 1, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, Ruins is bigger. There's definitely more trap potential in this one, right? Sound cues, very important. Also, right, the cycle of major items can be big. We'll see it start off very close to one another, but any player gets a little bit of extra edge in this map, and they will be trying to delay that to set up a full cycle for themselves, pick up the mega, pick up that heavy, and that's really when the hunt begins. So looks like we are back in it, and warm-up has finished. We're going to prepare to fight. And the winner of this one will be moving on in the upper bracket. Loser, unfortunately, dropping down to the lower. And as we kick off, base will get that heavy spawn.
We'll play slow. He doesn't have a rocket, so he needs to be wary of the positioning. But lovely flick rail off to the side. Awareness from base is on point already. Popping the piercing sight. Might even catch it down in the corridor here. Does, but doesn't hit the rail this time. And Ruins is a map where you can, particularly off of spawns, use that rail area as bait. Someone like cha1n, who needs it desperately. Base could use that as a bit of a trap moving forward, but it's null and void now as cha1n has got one to his name.
Base going up that jump pad, actually heard his opponent right around the corner, decided to backtrack, and there is the piercing sight to see where his opponent was, as he knows exactly where he is. Now base, seeing if he could set up a trap, actually decides to go for back to the heavy. And it does look like the mega was delayed just a bit. I didn't see what cha1n did off of the spawn, if that was like intentional or just based off of where he spawned. But as those two separate, that's where the game can get real interesting.
Slow pace game. Only 90 damage done in this map so far. Very calculated, trying to weed out the Nyx, but as we all know, you almost have to kill a Nyx twice. She'll pop the Ghost Walker, and then you either have to find her and kill her, or kill her again before it comes off cooldown. So that's the big challenge here, particularly for Visor, lacking in speed and mobility.
And I mean, it's like a scary thing with control of that heavy. Base is like a couple seconds away from potentially being able to put up a good battle there at the mega, and denying cha1n any level of control. Now, that's completely hypothetical. The timing also is going with the piercing sight, so he can kind of get an idea on when he can move out, where he could go. Oh, he gets actually hit from behind with a lot of LG. He's going to make his way over. Now, heavy was taken away, so cha1n actually disrupts the process here a little bit, and they switch it up. Base grabbing that mega, and now going back to square one.
I really like that play because it puts a little bit of edge onto base. Up until then, it's been stalemate. Base has had almost autonomy on the map, because the more defensive the Nyx plays, the more utility he gets out of that piercing sight, because then he gets a free cooldown usage out of the vials and gets much more uptime. But it puts now base in a bit of a corner because he doesn't know how the Nyx is going to be acting.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, right, we haven't really seen that Ghost Walk come into full play, but it's there, and cha1n doesn't have to use it until he needs it, right? It's like one of those few abilities where it's like, why aren't you at least using it? I know we had some comments about the dual wield or DJ coming out, but right, totally different, where there's plenty of opportunities to fight. Now here we have the heavy is up, base is going to grab it, rocket jump up to the top, looking for an opportunity to scoop up that mega. He does not find it. Great rockets from cha1n, putting up a little defensive rocket barrier there. We get the piercing sight come out. It's going to result in a rail, and actually might land a second one. He does, even after missing that jump, and it doesn't matter if you hit the rail. If you hit the rail, that was intentional.
Yeah, but there's no follow-up, and this is the problem where we're at such a stalemate, because they're playing this long-range game. You're never going to get a frag because they can always just run off the other direction. So somebody needs to be proactive and take a committal, and that's exactly what base is doing now, and he's caught him just before the spawn. cha1n got just a half second too greedy.
Yeah. And the LG was spot on. Base now seeing an open opportunity. The rocket jump up to the top. A perfect flick into the Gibby explosion of cha1n's body. And the gauntlet may come out. There is the ghost walk, but the heavy's been picked up. And now there is an opportunity. That Mega is about to spawn. Base heading on over there, sees it there. Is like, oh, wow, I've got it. And this kind of changes. I would imagine that we'll see Base kind of shift his game a little bit, having control of both of these items. There we see the piercing sight come out. He knows exactly where his opponent is as he kind of actually jukes him. Nicely done by cha1n playing games, but this is going to set up another potential item cycle here for Base as he grabs that heavy and will make his way to Mega.
Just want to say, I really like that first push by cha1n, because what he's doing, as we just have another engagement, oh no, he falls off, and that means cha1n will regroup. But what Base is doing by forcing these fights just before...
No! I don't know if I'd agree with that one.
He thought he'd gone, but he'd stuck around. He might be able to get a frag here, but what Base is doing here is that he's forcing cha1n to fight if he wants the item, and he won't win the fight because he hasn't got enough stack, which means he's then either going to have to try and take it to the death to get the item, or pop a ghost walk when he's so weak he then has to give up the whole map. So it's forcing cha1n to make a decision. I either instantly pop it and run away, because as soon as he starts engaging, he's already lost control. So it really is forcing cha1n into these micro decisions that at the moment Base is winning on.
Got some rails coming out. Nicely done by cha1n, answered by Base. cha1n, unfortunately, very low. And we're going to get that piercing sight. cha1n,
nice.
Double frag. Unfortunate as he's in the back, trying to heal back up, and Base now up by 3. And I honestly thought that risk by Base to rocket jump back up where cha1n was able to capitalize, it was going to turn into bad news bears for him, but he recovered from that one.
No, he did. He managed to catch him with the piercing sight once again, which we said how much value is going to come out of it. It seems to be incredible value every time he uses it.
Yeah. I mean, he's getting a lot of information, but we talked about it earlier where when piercing sight turns into a defensive tool for you, waiting for it. Did the old... like a bit slippery there. cha1n unfortunately goes down, but I do like what he was thinking about doing there. He kind of stopped for a moment, got behind Base, but just wasn't able to really capitalize on it. There's about 3 minutes left in this matchup, and Base still with the 4-frag lead. Now, what you really got to be watching for now is what Base's options are. Can he keep the pressure on? He absolutely can, but he can also begin to play a much more defensive game using that piercing sight to basically always be where your opponent is not. So he uses it, he sees his opponent way across the map. Instead, he's like, nope, I'm going to keep the pressure on, and good for him. There he gets the ghost swap popped again, and that might be his objective right there.
Lovely double back. He knows there's no ghost walk up now, and this could really just extend the lead to a point of no return. And he knows it. Heading a one rail and trading is going to be enough, as he knows now the next round of items are up. But cha1n is still sticking around and is in a world of pain. His Base should be able to pick up a clean frag, and it's looking really dire for cha1n, who just cannot get any semblance of control. And Base is doing such a good job of bullying his opponent to both pop out the ghost walk and then sweep up these frags.
That one hurt a little bit right off the spawn. Going to be looking for another one, and there it is. And that one is definitely going to be a GG. 8-1 as the final moments will play out. I really feel like cha1n played quite well in this matchup versus Base. Like, at this point, we're expecting a good performance out of Base.
Yeah.
Talked about his ability to kind of mold to his opponent. To be reactive in the ways that he needs to. There's a lot of players that have said, you know, they don't particularly like to play that style, but he displayed it quite well. cha1n, on the other hand, you know, he took a game off of Base. We still had some pretty close games. The last 2-3 minutes of that deep embrace game was phenomenal by cha1n. His rail was absolutely on. And I thought he played well. So I'd keep an eye on him even down in the lower bracket, because this is definitely the same cha1n that we saw performing well at the last finals.
No, absolutely. It's definitely a much better version of cha1n. I think the same problem persists in that in this map, his rail's been off and his whole game plan seems to fall apart. On the other hand, Base truly did play a remarkable game. It's very hard to get frags on Nyx, but the amount of times Base was able to force the issue and force Nyx to make a decision to fight or flight, made sure he kept map control and continually picked up the frags. So it was just great map awareness and a great understanding of how to play against Nyx. But no, I am a little bit worried for cha1n for when he isn't hitting his rails, because there was no real time that he was threatening Base because of that fact.
Yeah, and we talked about that flow, and you saw, like, use the last 3 minutes of Deep Embrace game as an example of, right, when cha1n's feeling it, what can happen. Base certainly put on quite a display, and his tried and true came out, but here in the final seconds, 13-3 is what we're looking at, a potential final score here. Base will advance in the upper bracket, and cha1n, unfortunately, will have to battle with his life on the line in the lower bracket. So congratulations to Base. Let's bring Ketchup back, who got to watch that fight in the front row, and see what he thought about it, if Ketchup is with us.
I am indeed.
Hello.
I'm kind of keeping one eye on the monitor just for when we change over, so there's not this kind of ethereal voice just out of nowhere. But hello, welcome back to me, I guess.
Welcome back to you, yes.
I gotta say,
what'd you think of that matchup?
I really enjoyed it. I think my favorite map to watch was definitely map 2, the Deep Embrace, and it wasn't just because of that kind of closing 60 seconds. It was actually the degree of patience. The opening moments of a few of those maps were not necessarily slow-paced, but there was a lot of care put into it. You know, Deep Embrace, it took about 2.5 minutes before cha1n even had the opportunity to get a railgun, and then that kind of like surprise factor with the LG behind kind of set the offensive wheels in motion, I suppose. But then Base being happy to capitalize on the situation, getting a lot more berserks out than we're used to seeing. And then, of course, the clutch comeback being made in the closing 60 seconds, which was the best part of the map for sure. But unfortunately, not able to carry that momentum into Ruins. I mean, you can even just see on the replays here, right? You know, we hit that 9-minute mark. At that point, so much of the damage had already been done. And Base always being that one step ahead. And I think Visor just helps him so much more to play that way. But guy's got a giant brain anyway, even without that kind of wall hack ability. So I think that it's satisfying 2-1, but at the end of the day, Base proving to be the better player in the series, and I think could still go very far in this tournament.
He absolutely can. And again, I thought Base looked on form this entire series. Yes, he looked map 2, but cha1n played almost out of his mind for large periods of that, and Base still played exceptionally well. And just look at the dominance on this map. And we already talked about the limitations that Visor had. He had almost exclusive control of all of the items beyond 9 of them. So full credit to the way in which Base played this, and he definitely showed his best form here. He picked up 13 frags with only 2,800 damage, so that was just pure efficiency, that almost every engagement he took landed a frag. So you have to credit him with how clinical he was and how good he looks going into the later stages of this event.
Absolutely. Well, another round of 16 match has concluded. We're going to take a quick break, and when we are back, coming up next, it's Cypher versus CNZ. CNZ already off an impressive victory this morning here at the QPL World Championship. Can he duplicate those efforts against Cypher? Well, that's a tough opponent we're going to see when we return. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.